It's been a minute, hasn't it? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, and if you have not, welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about something so exciting. We're talking about books. So it's July 5th, and I figured that that is as good of a time as ever to do a mid-year wrap-up. What I've read this year, what I have on my TBR, all kinds of stuff. So we're going to talk everything related to books. So to give you a little brief history on my GOODREADS, first of all, if you found me through YouTube and not through like my Instagram, I have a book Instagram where I post all about my books and about my writing, so if you'd like to check that out, you can. Almost all of these have reviews up on my Bookstagram, or I have a highlight reel where I post every time I finish a book, and also my thoughts and feelings and all different kinds of stuff. I post on my stories a lot if I'm reading. That's kind of where you find me. So yeah, if you're interested in any of that, I would love to connect with you and be your GOODREADS friend as well. My GOODREADS is linked down below. And yeah, let's get into it. I'll give you a brief history of me, because if you're new here, you don't know a lot about me. I'm an English major. I'm going to be a junior this year in college, so for me, reading is very important. So in 2021, whenever I first went into college, whenever I was a freshman, I started to really take reading a lot more seriously. That was like the end of my senior year through like my first semester of my freshman year. And I don't mean seriously in the sense of like making a career out of reading, because that's not really it. I just started to do it more consistently. I spent a lot of my life reading a lot, but reading a lot in very incremental amount of time. So I would read like, if I had like 3 weeks in the summer where I wasn't really doing anything, I would read like 10 books, and that would be like really all I picked up for the year. So I started to read a lot more consistently once I got into college, because I'm reading all the time. I also realized that like almost all of my bookshelf is books that I got on my Kindle and or EPUB filed them somehow. So the only books, and I went through my shelf right before this video to pull off all of the books that I had, and I only had 3 that I've read this year that are in hard copy. So yeah, my GOODREADS goal this year is 35 books, because I read 32 last year, and I'm at 16 of 35, so I'm 1 book behind. Okay, first book I read this year was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This one, if you don't know anything about this book, okay, this book, rough summary, is a book that was going all around TikTok. It's a mafia romance, and it's illustrated, and it's good. And what's interesting about this is I'm not usually a mafia like romance girly. I don't subscribe to that usually. It's just not usually where I like find my happy place, my zen. But I really like this one, and I want to read the rest of them, because like half of them are illustrated now, and I want to read all of them. So I gave this book 3 stars, which for me, my rating scale is super easy and super simple, and everyone will be able to follow it. I'm an easy grader. I don't partake in harsh grading. 3 means that it like did its job. Go you. Like it was like, you really like exactly, I came into this exactly knowing what I was gonna get, and you delivered just that. Nothing more, nothing less. 4 stars, oh my god, so good. You delivered a little bit more than what I expected, but less than 5 stars. 4 stars is an interesting range for me. It's usually like something about it like irked me, but not enough for it to like ruin the whole story. And 5 stars means I loved it. There's lots of 5 stars and 4 stars. I'm not, again, not a very harsh critic. Book 2 was a book that I read. We're gonna get into my English literature era, so just be ready, because those are coming, and I will be talking about them at length, because I do have good opinions about them. So the 2 classes that I took this semester where these books are going to be prominently displayed for you from are my women's writers class and my Shakespeare comedies and histories class. So should be really easy to tell which goes in which pile, because some of them are written by Shakespeare and the other half are not. So This first book I read for my women's writers class, I give it 5 stars. Oh, so good. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. This book is Passing by Nella Larson. I have tried to get everybody I know to read this book. It's not very long, and it's so impactful, and it's so good. And I don't know if it was the class discussion that made it so much better, because like, the class discussion that we had was really good, but it was just wonderful. It's written so beautifully. I cannot describe how wonderful Nella Larson is as an author. She is just the most magnificent storyteller ever. She can write the most beautiful prose. Next is Midsummer's Night's Dream by Shakespeare. Boo, tomato, tomato, tomato. No, I don't like this one. Yeah, this one sucked. I hated this book. I hated it. I didn't like it. It was so bad. Boo. There's a couple of these in this class. I took this professor twice, so for 2 different classes in the same year, and I read Shakespeare in the previous class as well, and some of them I had to reread for this class, and I don't remember if this is one of them. All of Shakespeare's plays are so weird, and people don't think that they're weird until they start reading all of them, and you're like, oh my god, it makes no sense, and there's a million characters, and I just can't. Some people like Shakespeare. However, I am not one of those people. The 4th book that I read this year was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I loved this book. It's so good. I read this, again, for my women's writers class. I give it 5 stars. It's a book that I wanted to read actually for a very long time. There's a picture somewhere in my camera roll. I wish I knew where it was. I went to New York City in 2018, and the first place that we went once we got off of the plane and into the city was a bookstore. In this edition, this book was the first book I saw. I didn't buy it, and I saw it on my class list like 6 years later, or 5, yeah, I guess 5 years later, and it made me very happy, and it's very full circle. I love Shirley Jackson. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Okay, this story follows these two girls, okay? They're crazy girl. Crazy girl. Like, just like so silly. So crazy. Basically live in this town, but okay, Mary Catherine. Constance. Mary Catherine goes out in the town because her sister needs stuff. Constance never leaves the house because there's an accident, their entire family is dead. What are you gonna do about it? Story follows them and their estranged uncle who comes, I think it's an uncle or it's a cousin, to come and take their land. Town hates them. Can you tell by the cover that the town doesn't like them? So good. So chilling. Written so well. I don't know what else you want. Perfect. I have no complaints. Next is Much Ado About Nothing by Shakespeare. This is the only Shakespeare play that I actually really like, and I'm not sure if it's more so Shakespeare as much as it is there's a live theater version of Much Ado About Nothing with very famous people in it, and I can't remember it, but it's like, it was done in like 2011, 2012, and it's recorded on like DVD, so you can buy it. But my teacher bootlegged it on YouTube. I'll put the picture up, because he pulled it up, and this man is like easily in his like late 50s, early 60s, and this is what he pulled up, and I had a field day with it. I thought it was so funny. I loved reading it because there's a lot of this like true like enemies to lovers, like Beatrice and the guy who I can't remember the name of. Love them. I couldn't have cared less about anything else happening in that play, but I loved them. Next book I read was Sula by Toni Morrison. Also so good. In case you need a little like bookmark, we're still in the I'm reading this for my degree era. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I kind of dragged. I wasn't as captivated by it as I was with Passing or with We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I didn't think it was necessarily bad. Toni Morrison can definitely write a book, but something about like the story connection overall was not like my 100% my favorite. Also, there's some just like really like graphic images in it that kind of just like threw me off. But 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it overall. I felt, obviously, Toni Morrison is a legend. She can do no wrong. Okay, next. is something I audiobooked, and this was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I have never read Harry Potter. I was not a Harry Potter kid, but now I want to be one, so I'm audiobooking all of them. It takes me a while to get through the audiobooks, just because I don't listen to them all the time. I'll go through phases where I'm listening to them a lot, but I gave it 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It was great. The audiobooks are great if you have wanted to read Harry Potter or thinking about it or haven't read Harry Potter, because I'm assuming that's the only people who don't know already that the audiobooks are worth your while. Highly recommend. Very good, and they keep your attention, and I enjoy them a lot. And they're just, like, fun and good. And I don't say this to support J.K. Rowling. Next, I read A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. I read this for class. I never rated it, and I don't really know why, but I enjoyed it. It was good. I think that it's something that I wish I had more time to read more than once, because I enjoyed it a lot, but I felt like there were things that I missed because I was reading it so quickly, and we would talk about it in class, and I'm like, I did not pick up on that. I have no recollection of that happening. So if I had time to go back and reread it, I probably would. It's a classic, lots of people have read it, but I would like to at some point maybe go back and reread it. We have finished, book shut, case closed, of the 2023 spring semester. It's done. She's finished. I have no more books that are read for school. So we're out of our English major era. And we're into things that I read for fun, because we're on summer break. The first book that I read was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, because it sounded good. And let me tell you, it delivered. Somebody said, and gave it like 2 stars because of this, they said it was a Criminal Minds, like, high school edition. Why is that bad? I gave it 4 stars. There were parts where it dragged, or that I didn't feel like the writing style necessarily was fully like what I would have anticipated from it, but it was really good. There's like 4 books in the series, and I've read 2 so far. I've put them on hold because I'm reading other things and I'm trying to get through other books. Come on, you cannot go wrong with this. If you wanted a description of what it is Criminal Minds, but with teenagers, okay? It's so good. 4 teenagers who have these special psychic abilities work for the, like, FBI, okay, and they're supposed to do cold cases, and they never actually do the cold cases. They always do, like, these crazy live, like, cases of serial killers. Oh my god. Oh my god. It's so good, and the love triangle isn't really a love triangle, but it kind of is, and it's done well. Something that I think is to be acknowledged, and also acknowledged very positively, is that it's super fast-paced, especially this first one. So you're never bored. Not once was I ever bored. Lots of people may know Jennifer Lynn Barnes for the Inheritance games, because that's her newest series and it kind of took off on Book Talk, but this one, read this one. Okay, I haven't read the Inheritance games. I'm sure it's lovely, but this one I can tell you is so good and so worth your time. Next, I read the first book in the Zodiac Academy series because I had some lovely friends who told me to read it, and it took me a while to finish it. It was one of the 2 books I started in December. I have thoughts, but also this book feels like no thoughts. It's not necessarily bad if you know what you're in for. I gave it 3 stars. I knew what I was in for, and I think it delivered exactly what I was in for. I don't know if I could sustain reading all 8/9 books in this series a straight to DVD release movie. Like, if it's like that in book form. Like, totally. Next, I read the second book in the Natural series. So good. Give it 5 stars. Amazing. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed that one maybe more than the first one, because I enjoyed I felt like there was, like, plot twists and stuff that were a little bit more prominent than the last book. And also, there wasn't as much setup. We were, like, right back in the action with our girlies, and it was great. Next, I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. 5 stars. I would probably say it's closer to 4.5 than 5, but it's still wonderful. I very much enjoyed this. I wonder if I would have enjoyed it more had I not known a big part of it. I mean, it's something that you learn early on if you've read this book, but it's something I wish I didn't know going into it. And I wish I would have gone into this book completely blind, but I enjoyed it. I think it's not my favorite Taylor Jenkins read, and I wrote this in my Goodreads review, and I think it's very true. I said, lots of people can write books, but not everyone can tell a story, and I think that's so true, and this one's just done so well. I think that Book Talk also destroyed the hype for me with this. This is something that I've had on my list for years before Book Talk was even conceived as an idea. And so obviously the hype kind of like drives up that whenever I already had like a very high like intent to read this. So I think that that kind of affected me a little bit because this is her most hyped book out of all of her books. I've read a lot of other ones and I don't think that this one is like, oh my god, the best. I think it's up there for sure, but it's not my favorite. Next I read, okay, this next one had me like literally like kicking and screaming all over the floor. So the thing about me is I'm a fanfiction kid at heart. Naturally, that is where my home lies. It's books and fanfiction. I will always be a fanfiction girly. I will always and forever be a fanfiction girly. And so because of that, I have an immense draw to things that remind me of fanfiction. Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. It's that for me. Fanfiction. And 2, hockey players. Boom. You have Heated Rivalry, okay? And I don't mean this in the sense of like, it is fanfiction, because it's not. It's fully a like written, like someone wrote this book from scratch, but it reads like a fanfiction, okay? I read this so fast. This took all of my attention. Oh my god, it felt so like weird to even count it in this because it just read like I was reading fanfiction. Like it was so, and I mean that as the highest form of a compliment, okay? Like the absolute highest form of a compliment. Heated Rivalry is 2 hockey players, 2 male hockey players, and they're rivals on the ice, but for years they've been sleeping together, and it starts whenever they're like 18 and first drafted to the NHL, and it's like their whole relationship. And I will say it's a lot of smut, like so much. I read a lot of reviews and a lot of people were like, okay, like sometimes like I didn't want to read like 90% of this book is smut. And to be fair, it is, but you have to remember the way that it is, and it's because they like they can't like have a relationship outside of this, okay? That's the whole point, and you just have to suspend your belief. Next book I've read is probably my favorite book this year so far. I know it'll be in contender for my favorite book of the year total. I don't see how anything could beat this out. There's one thing I am, it's a fan of Emily Henry. Let me just have my time to say my piece about this book, because no amount of words that I say could do this book justice. Two of my writing icon and legends. As a writer and someone who chooses to write and tell stories and looks for people who tell stories how I want to tell stories, these 2 women do it for me every time. And I look to them as to how they tell stories, how they write certain things, how they portray relationships and characters. And the one thing that I'm always reminded of with both Taylor Jenkins Reid and Emily Henry is how real their characters are, how genuine and authentic and natural everything about these books are. This, okay, is this my favorite Emily Henry book? Honestly, potentially. I read this so fast, and it was so refreshing, because I knew that they were going to get together, but I didn't know they were going to get together. Does that make sense? I feel like there's a very different line, because this is a romance novel, not necessarily like a rom-com. The feelings that I have towards this book I don't think can be fully described. It's not sad, yet I felt like I was on the brink of tears every time I opened this book. I'm so invested in their relationship, in Wynn and Harriet's relationship, in their friend's relationship, in their place, in their thing, in what they want, and who they can have, and who they are. Y'all, this book is my everything. Every time I finish a book by Emily Henry, I'm always drawn back to like, I want a love like that. I want to be able to love and have a love like that. I want to live in a book like this. And the thing about this too is it doesn't feel like her characters are like you can read so many men and you think you feel like they're like written by a woman. Yes. Are the men in these books written by women? Yes, this woman specifically in particular. But it doesn't feel like that. Like, they feel just so, like, I read them and I'm like, I could walk around on the street and find you. Let's give you a brief summary. If you don't know, this book follows 4 friends? Yeah, 4, technically 6 friends, and one of them has a family lake house in Maine, I think. And there's lots of things going on. Our main character, Harriet, and her college boyfriend, then fiance, now ex-fiance, is there because they're all in the same friend group. And they have to try and act like they're still together because they haven't told their friends that they have decided to break off the engagement. I mean, I could talk about this for days. I have so many thoughts about this book. Okay, obviously, coming off of that high, nothing was going to be able to top this book. Nothing. I knew coming out of that, I was not going to be able to read anything that was going to be able to match that for me. I needed something that was like summer, blah 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 blah, beach, tropical, love. You know, you get the vibe. Thought for a second about rereading The Summer I Turned Pretty, then remembered that I didn't like the books that much. Placed a hold at my library, and it came open the day that I needed it to come open, and the day that I finished Happy Place, and that was The Young Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. This book has been a book that I've wanted to read for a very, so long. I read it. It's so meh. Like, it's so meh. And I don't mean that because of any other reason besides the fact that I just wasn't invested in their relationship. First of all, her name is Olive. Can we stop naming our main characters Olive? I just, like, don't like it. There's so many other names that I would have gone besides Olive. Olive is such a awkward name, and it always seems to amplify the awkwardness that they want this character to portray. No Olive that I've read is cool. It's a very awkward name, and they use it to accelerate the awkwardness. Loved how it started. I loved the exposition so much. Like, I loved everything with her sister and the food poisoning. Oh my god, it felt like a Hallmark movie, okay? But then I started to, like, be so disinterested. And I don't know, it just, the writing, the cadence just I never really got with the cadence. I didn't really like Ethan. I didn't like Olive narrating. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good, which is why I give it 3 stars. So the last book that I have read this year so far, it was one I finished the other day, was I actually read Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer, which is a hockey romance, and it's the first in a series. I give this book 3 stars to start it off with. I enjoyed it. I don't like the Grumpy Sunshine, and I didn't know that going into it. I was selected to read this arc. I was like sent an email, and I've never done that before, and I was very excited to do that, so I appreciate the opportunity a lot, and I definitely want to read the next book in the series because I think it's about the main character's sister, but the whole theme of this and the way it's marketed is Grumpy Sunshine, and that's not always a hugest fan of Grumpy Sunshine, and that's not anything on the author. That's just, I think it's odd. I did like their relationship though, how they like had kind of had a thing in high school, and it's established very early on that like he had a thing for her and she had a thing for him and like whatever. I didn't like the pet names. He gave her a pet name that I did not like at all. No, you'll never catch me. No, I'm not one for that. I do not like it at all. But besides that, it was pretty good. I became more invested in the sister's relationship. Pippa, who's the main girl, has a sister named Hazel, who has a, like, enemies to lovers. We can kind of see, like, the background of her, like, the little hints at it in, like, with another, like, rival hockey player. Oh, I'm obsessed. I need them right now. Okay, so those are all the books that I've read so far this year. Let me give you, okay, so because we've done that, because we're here, I'm gonna give you, now it's time for the portion of the video where I give you my future, like, hopefuls, because I'm such a mood reader, so the likelihood of me actually getting to these is slim to none. But I want to share them with you anyway, of what I would like to read and what I would like to get to before the end of the year and to have on my wrap up, and we'll check back in December and see where we lie. So let me give you my hopefuls. They're here. So we'll start off easy. The first book that is hopeful for me, and the one that I will achieve, is A Conjuring of Light by Victoria Schwab. I've been reading this book since December. To be fair, there was a period of time where I was not reading because of school. This one was the one that I was reading in conjunction with Zodiac Academy. I'm like 65% of the way through this book. It's a slow move for me. It's not bad. I've always talked about how long these books take me just because I'm not a huge like fantasy girl or big book girly. These just kind of take me a while, but I love them so much. Next is actually a middle grade book. It's Look Both Ways by Jason Reynolds. This has been sitting on my shelf for a minute. I bought it last year. I love middle grade, and this is a middle grade anthology. I've wanted to start reading more middle grade because I may write a middle grade, and I think middle grade is just always a good genre to be well versed in. I work with kids a lot, and knowing what they're reading, knowing what's going on in their world, I think is really important. Next, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This has been on my list for so long. This, oh my god, y'all. I want to read this so bad. I just know once I start it, I'm gonna like fly through it. Let me tell you, she is coming for me. I'm so excited. Next, this one has been sitting on my shelf for a minute, and I wanted to read it, and I haven't. And I fully bought it because the Fairy Loot box version of this was gorgeous. It came out a couple years ago, and I was obsessed with it. And once I realized I couldn't buy the Fairy Loot box version, I bought this one. Last for my physical TBR of like books that sit on my shelf physically that I want to read this year, Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. My brother got me this for Christmas, and I am very excited to read it. It just sounds so good. I have wanted to read this for so long, and now I have it actually sitting in my hands. Books that are not physical. This list could go on forever, but I'll give you a couple off of my 2023 to read list on GOODREADS. The next one is Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting. Oh my god. Oh my god, I saw this on my feed the other day. I literally, it sounds so good. It sounds so good. So, okay. So that's also on my list. And I think I'm going to end it there before I'm talking forever about books that I may not actually get to this year. That brings us to the end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I know I can ramble a lot about books, but I hope you are someone who enjoys the rambling about books, and that's why you watch this. And if you did like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, or follow me on my Bookstagram, or follow me on my main account, or request to be friends with me on GOODREADS. All of them are fine and acceptable ways to tell me that you enjoyed this. So, yeah. I'll talk to you soon. Bye!